Hooray! Today I have found a solution to my walking issues. A friend of mine recently, when I mentioned it on Facebook, mentioned these things to go on my boots. So I at least feel stable now to walk in the snow. So I'm making the most of it on this absolutely incredible day and just kind of walking around my garden with these on my feet. Maybe I'll venture a little bit further afield, but I just need to know that I'm completely stable. Well, I did try to go a bit further, but I'm still not 100% stable with these things on my feet, and also I just found myself looking down a lot on my feet, and that's another symptom actually. Bending my neck to look down makes my head worse, kind of fills it with pressure. So back to the garden, just walking slowly around, enjoy just this beautiful, beautiful weather, but just being cautious and taking it easy. But it's just so good to be in the fresh air. So it's 2:30 and I'm out again, walking in the snow, hooray! But I just thought I'd mention quickly that one of the things that's rather frustrating about trying to walk in the snow in my garden is the constant need to keep turning. And that's another thing that gets my head kind of going. It's kind of the constant turning around, having to turn my neck, having to turn my body. So that's something that's a bit of a pain. I'm just much better when I can just walk in one direction and keep going, and not have to kind of keep turning. But you know, it's just really nice to be outside and to experience walking in snow again after many years of trying to avoid it due to the risk of slipping and making kind of things worse for my leak and my spine. One of the reasons that I'm very cautious about slipping is because in May 2017 I was picking my daughter up from a kind of activity at another school, and just as we were leaving I tripped on the curb and I fell flat onto the pavement, and that trip caused me a complete relapse for absolutely months. I just didn't get better. We assumed it had done damage to the leak again, which it probably did. If I have got a bone spur, that could have gone straight in. But also the way I tripped, because I tripped forward, probably would have flared the arachnoiditis and caused inflammation. So I was about 4 months from the May to the September, just stuck 23 hours a day flat, in a lot of pain, just could hardly walk very far, could only be up maybe 15-20 minutes, sometimes half an hour in the morning. And it was after that time that I had the CT Myelogram, and I had a horrific experience with the CT Myelogram, and I will tell you about that in a bit when I'm inside, because that really does relate to the arachnoiditis, so I think it's worth talking about that. Right, so I was just telling you outside about the CT Myelogram. Now, having a CT Myelogram for a spinal fluid leak is a very normal procedure, but my CT Myelogram experience was rather traumatic. I had heard from a lot of people that CT myelograms can give some people very intense headaches when the contrast goes in and you're flipped up and down, as the contrast kind of goes into your head, you can get a severe headache. But for me, it was not only a severe headache, it was horrific. It was horrific pain. It was horrific pain in my spine. And I had experienced a CSF leak by then for nearly 3 years. I knew what pain is like. I've had headaches, but to me, it was just horrific. And what happened in my situation, apparently, I was told later, is between 1 or 2 hours after the procedure, while I was in the radiology recovery, I apparently screamed, which would make sense because I was in such horrific pain, and then had a full-blown seizure. And the nurse, one of the nurses that was attending to me, who I saw kind of later on, said they all freaked out. They would. I clenched my teeth, so I wasn't breathing for a bit. They were all rather scared. But I did come round eventually. And by then my husband was there, and it was strange because he wasn't there. And then I kind of come round and I'm attached to these machines and my husband's there. But I was so unwell. I mean, at that point I had the most horrific headache. I was the most nauseous I've ever been, and I was admitted at that point. And unfortunately, the CT Myelogram, I was already really, really ill, as I've explained, and then I had the CT Myelogram and I was even more ill. And interestingly, my legs were worse. Interestingly, my low pressure was worse. Interestingly, everything was worse. So after seeing my normal neurologist, we decided, well, obviously, you know, it seems to maybe the lumbar puncture has made things worse, my leak worse. So thankfully, they kept me in, and a week later I had a blood patch. And seeing that I was having a blood patch anyway, you know, to make sure we covered that new lumbar puncture, we did a blind blood patch, and I had a 40 ml blood patch. But again, my response to that was horrific levels of pain. And as we know now, due to the arachnoiditis, having just had a flare, being in a flare, having a CT myelogram, and then having a high volume epidural blood patch is kind of like everything you don't want to have if you have arachnoiditis or adhesive arachnoiditis. And I was very, very poorly. And we thought at the time that maybe I was going into rebound high pressure. I responded quite well to acetazolomide, but I can just remember being in that bed again. I just kept getting up, kind of just moving around. I just had to move around. I was just in, you know, horrific pain. And eventually they kept me in a few days, but eventually, you know, I was kind of stable enough to go home. But for the next 2-3 months, I was in kind of suicidal levels of pain again. I just was not comfortable in any position, flat up, you know, which can happen if you have rebounded into high pressure. That's quite common. People reporting that are in kind of high pressure after an effective blood patch is that they're just, you know, that they can't get comfortable in any position. Also, you can fluctuate, your pressures can fluctuate. So, you know, but I was just in so much pain and all over the place. And the only way I came out of that time, and at times it took me into kind of very dark suicidal times, because it was just day and night, kind of, you know, just levels of pain, couldn't get comfortable, couldn't be flat, couldn't be up, nausea, everything else. The way I came out of that was through walking. I just started walking, and I found that walking was better for me than lying down. And that's when I started a kind of, well, about a 15-month stretch of just doing similar to what I've done, you know, over the past few months, is just walking and walking and walking and being on my feet and walking and walking and walking and walking. And as I did that, I began to improve, which again makes sense with regards to CSF flow and getting my kind of legs moving and dealing with the inflammation. Even though I wasn't on any decent anti-inflammatories, that walking really kind of saved me during that time, because I think otherwise I could have, you know, gone more downhill. So that's advice to anybody, you know, if you think you might have arachnoiditis or inflammation in the spinal canal due to treatment for CSF leaks or anything, then please get walking, because it really could save you kind of developing bigger complications. But yes, I hadn't intended to do a video today, but I just wanted to tell that story because it seems relevant. But I am having a good day. It's now 3 o'clock. I've been up all day. Yesterday I was up till about 5-6 o'clock as well. My back is hurting, that's quite normal. My head kind of comes and goes, but I am doing well.